If you've seen any of our recent videos, you know that we've been transitioning from mixing and recording 100% in the box to more of a hybrid type setup. Now, one of the things during that transition that I've had to do is create a new recording template to help us save some time on each recording session. I'm going to share you my template, what I use, how I start off every session with you today. So stick around, let's get into it. What's going on, y'all? Hey, if you're new to the channel, I'm Ray with Second Chance Rising, and this is the channel that's more than just about our music and about our ministry, but it's about gear reviews and mixing tutorials. And as I said earlier, we've been moving from mixing 100% in the box to more of a hybrid type setup. And I want to share with you my recording template that we start every session off with, whether we're recording our own band or someone else's. We're using Studio One version 6 as the DAW. I think you'll find this useful whether you're using Pro Tools or Logic or whatever that you may be using. If you're using Studio One, I'm going to make this template available to you for download. I'll leave a link down in the description. You'll just need to subscribe to our website. We'll send you an email where you can download that. You can always unsubscribe if you don't want to, but we certainly appreciate your support. So before we go any further, make sure you hit that subscribe button and ring that bell and like that video. So one of the things that'll make this process a lot easier if you have some kind of input and output sheet already designed up. So this is one that I actually got from Edgetone Studios. He was kind enough to send it to me, another YouTuber, and I kind of adapted it for my setup. Here I've got 3 HD8s. So I've got 8 inputs for each unit. This is all 3 of them here. And then each unit has 10 outputs, and those are represented in this other color. And I've kind of used some different colors to kind of set those different outboard gear apart where I could recognize it a little bit easier. So if you've got something along this lines, it doesn't have to be anything fancy. It can be just a sheet of paper with it wrote down on some lines, but have something already planned out as far as all your inputs and outputs. I kind of detailed this a little bit further in a different video. I'll go ahead and leave a link down below if you want to check it out and kind of how I plan this out. This down here was actually for a patch bay that I didn't end up using because I quite frankly, with 24 inputs and 30 outputs, I had enough room. And then let me show you kind of what I did to make this process a lot easier as well in Studio One. So in Studio One, what I have done is in the inputs and the outputs, I've labeled each one of these for what that particular mic's going to be. So I do realize everybody may not have 24 inputs, so you may have to utilize a patch bay. But in case you do, what I was able to do, having this many inputs, is I've labeled each input for what I want to use it for. So it's kick, snare, top, snare, bottom, and so forth and so on. Some of them are just inputs are open, and I've been able to rename all of these as well and the outputs as well. So every template that I have everything categorized in folders: drums, bass, acoustic, electric guitar, keys, vocals, background vocals, scratch tracks, scratch vocals, electric guitars, scratch guitars, click, reference tracks even, and all the effects channels. So we'll kind of go through those a little bit here in just a second. So the first thing mine opens up to is the scratch tracks. Because typically, see, those are being a folder. Typically, when I open it up, it's going to have a place for a scratch vocal and a scratch guitar. And that's pretty much where I start every session. So once we kind of get that down, we can kind of put that away. And usually we start tracking drums first. And here's what we've got on the drums. So basically, I have a kick, a snare, obviously a snare bottom, 3 toms, and overhead ride. I started labeling instead of left and right, overhead ride, overhead hats, a drum percussion. We've either got this mic'd into a MIDI type unit my drummer uses a lot of times, or we can put a mic on it and we can record anything from change to pill bottles to aspirin to whatever he feels like the percussion or whatever we feel like the song needs. Also, I already have a Superior drummer loaded up in here ready to go. So typically I have been using probably for the last couple years some samples for the kick and the snare. So I'll add those kick kick and the snare samples in between here somewhere. And then we've got the buses already kind of lined up, ready to go. So our drum bus, kick bus, and a snare bus. So what the kick bus is doing is going to take the original kick that we record, and I'm going to blend in typically a kick sample, and then a snare. I'm going to do the same thing with the snare top and snare bottom and the snare sample. I'm going to blend that in. Both of those will feed into the main drum bus right here, and that's where our sound is going to originate from. Let me show you what kind of plugins or kind of how we've got this set up as well. So using Pipeline, I've got a distressor already on this. If you haven't seen my Pipeline video on how to set up Pipeline in Studio One, go check it out. So I got a distressor on the kick. I've got a distressor running through Pipeline on the snare. If you're watching this and you're not using any outboard gear, you can certainly substitute whichever plugin that you want to use here. So it'll still be helpful to you. And I'm going to leave this this template down below in the description where you can have that for a download if you want to use this as a template and modify. It's pretty easy to do. So one of the things here as well, as you can see on the drum bus, I don't have a lot of other plugins on any of these tracks for the drums. I kind of do what we call top-down mixing, so to speak. I start with the drum bus. I've got on the drum bus, I've got the ART VLA stereo bus compressor. On the drum bus, it lives there. I've got a fab filter. And then I've got another 1176 that we may or may not use, but that's just kind of my starting point. I don't necessarily have these on when I'm recording. This is where I'll start to blend these in, and I got a room reverb already set up for that. Also have the same Pipeline 1176 or whatever other outboard gear. It's just as simple as going up here and selecting if I want the 1176 in there or if I want the distressor in there. And actually, I just noticed that I don't need this in building this. I don't need this distressor in both places, so I'm going to remove this one. Because what I want to do, I want to compress and treat all three of those kicks or all three of those snare tracks as one. That's where I'm going to start out. If I need to add something else to the individual ones, I will, but I'm going to start here and kind of treat it as one instrument. Now, if you making, this may be worth showing here too, but as I just made this change, if you're making changes in your templates, you can go up here to File, hit Save as Template. I'm going to hit Replace Existing Template. It's going to show that template file, and the one that I'm going to replace is this one right here, my latest one that I've got labeled 9124, and I'm going to open that, and I'm going to save it. So now that has saved changes that I've made, so next time I open up that template, it'll be more in line to what I'm using. So as you changing these things around, or if you download this template and you make some changes, it's as easy as doing that. So those are all my drums. They all stay mic'd up, ready to go, and here's where the input helps when you're building this template. So when I've selected the input, I've named it, so I don't have to say, oh, that's input number 3, so on forward and so forth. It's already labeled, so I can put kick, the snare top, select the snare bottom, select each one of the toms, select the overheads. Also, you can see I've got these routed to the buses already. This one's going into the kick bus. When I create the kick sample, it will go into the kick bus as well. These are going in both into the snare bus. Everything else is going into the main drum bus. Sometimes I may take the overheads out and put them into an overhead bus and treat them separately. It just depends on the track and how we get it, how we got it going on, how it's working. So those are kind of all of what I just kind of start the session with, and that's kind of what it looks like as far as the drum recordings. I'm going to show you the fader port here. So when I shut each one of these folder tracks, so I'm going to shut the drum track now, so all of those go away. So I'm just looking at the main input and the main output. If I open those drums back up, they come here. So now we're going to look at the bass. So keeping those in those folder tracks, it really keeps me focused on those individual areas that I'm working on. So you don't have to start panning through a bunch of areas. So as far as the bass track, I've got a bass DIN, and then I've got a one that's already mic'd up, ready to go if we want to use a microphone. So we got two bass tracks, and once again, we got a bass bus. So I can just blend both of these tracks in. If I have to, I can blend those in with the bus into the overall mix. I don't always have to do each individual track separately. Once I get these two blended together, going into the bus, and I got one fader that I can make it into the overall mix, if that makes sense. Acoustic. I've got an acoustic track that I've always got set up just to run one mic, one mono mic, typically just micing it maybe around the 12th or 14th fret. I can use that as a DI, I very rarely do. And then I've got something already set up for the mid-side recording, because I do that a lot on acoustic. I've got that running already set up. It's going through an MPA. It's another piece of art gear that I really, really like. It's got a mid-side function on it. Probably do a video on that in the future, showing how we do that. So those tracks will already be spread left and spread right. So I've got those three set up. Now, if I need to add another acoustic track, obviously I can just click on that and duplicate track or add that track. And it'll just automatically go into that folder. Once I get all these acoustics, they'll be going to the main acoustic bus, and I'll be able to blend that in. Let's see what kind of plugins I'm kind of starting with here. Here, once again, I'm starting on just the bus. I'm not putting anything on the individual tracks. I typically do come back and put some things on the acoustic tracks, but just got an EQ on there, as well as a 2A, and that's inside the box. So I don't have enough 2As and distressors and 1176s to run separate on every single one. I can certainly print that if I need it, and then bring that in here using Pipeline and use the hardware gear. Electric guitars, I just got a couple right now. It's stuck in there left and right. Typically there may be as many as 15 electric guitar parts on a particular song that we typically do. All those will be going into the bus here as well. I'll tell you about the buses here shortly too. In the keys, I have a piano already ready to go. I have the complete software ready to go, whether that's, if we're doing some shakers or something like that, I might put in there. And then I've got an organ sometimes, which is not loaded up right now. I have it plugged in. A little B3 sound, a little Southern rock sound. I love it. Use that on the Road and a couple other songs recently. So got key tracks ready to go in there. Then we come down to the vocals. I've got 3 tracks ready to go in here. Typically, I'm going to record this main vocal track. Sometimes I may copy that over, or I'll sing another one right along with it. I'll split this one left, split this one right. I'll probably usually bring those down a little bit lower out of the mix, and treat them with some completely different EQs to kind of thicken up this main vocal right here. And then we've got the background vocals. Typically got a couple of those in there, and I'll be adding sometimes as many as 6, 8, or 10, or 12 background vocals. All right, we talked about the scratch tracks already. I always have some reference tracks in the session. I've only loaded up one here now, but got one loaded up in here, but I'll bring a couple more of those in here during the mixing stages, as many as I need, sometimes as many as 5 or 6. Vocal-wise, let me jump back there and show you what I got as far as plugins here. This is kind of a standard EQ that I kind of start off with for my personal vocal. I know that mine looks kind of strange, but it sounds good. I just kind of pulled that in from one of our other tracks. Hybrid gear that we're using, the hardware gear, the 1176 I've got in there. Got some more EQ, de-esser, and then a little 2A in the box. Coming in, I can either record this through the WA73 2A. Let me show you that. See if I can hold the phone somewhat steady. So we've got the WA73 here with the 2A underneath, and this is routed into the WA73. So if I want to insert on the way in this 2A, I just click on the insert. This puts the 2A into place, and then so I'm usually hitting that right off the get-go while it's going into the DAW. Now, another thing that I can do is I can actually put that 73 and the 2A into Pipeline and actually run any other, if I've got a vocal that maybe I went straight in, didn't run it through the preamp, maybe I went straight into the Presonus HD8 and I want to get a little color, a little flavor to it, run it through the 2A. I can use Pipeline with that too and run it back through that and loop it back around and come back into the DAW and print it that way as well. So it's a pretty cool feature. Can't wait to dig more into using this hybrid type setup. So that's kind of what I kind of got going in as a starting point on the vocal. I know that's always, for me, that's always something that I've always wanted to look at. All right, so let's look at the, let me shut this vocal track. So once again, that gets everything out of the way if I'm not working on vocals, kind of keeps me more focused. Now we've got all of our effects channels, and here's what I've always got set up. I always have a 1/4-inch delay set up, an 1/8-inch delay. Here's a hall reverb, room reverb, or plate reverb, and then some other different effects. Always EQ the reverbs. This is typically what mine looks like, kind of just taking a little bit off the low end, a little bit off the high end. This is one of my new favorite plugins from UAD. I've got this, I haven't really experimented with it. I've only had this maybe about 6 months. So I hadn't really used it a lot. But this will be set up in some kind of 1/4-inch delay type preset that'll be a go-to. Using the stock plug-in, here it's just set up in a quarter delay, and so forth and so on. And then once again, this is a good time to mention, if you download this this template, it's going to be down. You're using Studio One, it's going to be down in the description. And you get this and you don't have that particular UA plug-in and you're not using any hardware gear, you can easily use this template. Just delete that plug-in that's going to show up missing, and then add whichever delay or whichever reverb that you're using. And then that way, and then save it as a template and override it. And then you'll have a good template to start your sessions off with. And as you progress and do them one after another, you'll start making tweaks and changes, and you may want to save that as a template as well. So here, what else we have? Basically the same thing, same EQ, same UAD plugin, same analog delay. This one's just set up here as an 1/8-inch dotted eighth note. All right. Then we've got a reverb here, EQ'd, and then this is my new favorite. This LXA 480. Love this little hall setting right here, but this has kind of been my go-to here lately. Really liking that one. Then I've got this one that I've got labeled a room reverb. I've got the same 480 in here that I use on a plate sometimes, but I've also, depending on what the song's calling for, I might use this room reverb, which is a stock plugin for Studio One, the mix reverb. This is a new one from Isotope, Neoverb. I'm not sure, I guess that's how you say that. I haven't really used this much. I've experimented around with it a little bit. Sounds pretty interesting. You can actually EQ the reverb down here, so you don't have to EQ it on this other one. So I really like the looks of this plugin. It's got a lot of pieces here. I'll have to experiment with that a little bit more. Hey, if y'all are using that, let me know your thoughts on it, how you like it. And then you got some more this Nectar reverb here, which I haven't used very much at all either. So I have some go-to reverbs already ready to go in place. And then once again, these are in a folder track, so it kind of keeps my session neat where I don't have to look at it very much, and I can just put that away. So another thing that I like is just getting the overall layout of the session, the song, kind of the template put into place in what I'm doing. And you can kind of see here, up here, I've kind of laid out, I've got 2 bars in, which is for a click track to get started before you actually have to hit your first note. Gives you some time. Also, sometimes people, if they're using backing tracks, that'll give them a little bit of time to count in or something like that. This is just a general intro, verse, chorus, turnaround, verse 2, chorus, turn, bridge, outro, chorus. Okay, you can see right here that I've got that misspelled wrong. I can change this. And what I can do here is I can go up here, so I've seen that. I can go to File. I want to save this as a template. Once again, this is easy for you to do. Replace the existing template. This is the one I'm working with. I'm going to OK, open it, and then OK and save it. That just shows you can update this template as you go along. You see little small things that are incorrect. And then now next time you open that template, I won't have to worry about that misspelling. So this is, so once the song is set in place and we get the main scratch track done, I can adjust these areas to however big we need it, to make this closer to being, more accurate to the song. And then that way what I'll do is in Studio One's got a nice feature is I can create marker tracks, and that puts each one of these markers too. So during the session, I can click through this marker track pretty quickly. You can see, oh, hey, we need to kind of record that bridge back over. We can skip right over there and punch into the bridge. And then let's do the outro also. We can go all the way back to the outro. So those are a lot of pretty neat features right there. So that is mostly, let me show you this. One other thing here, got pipeline actually on the master bus, and I've got the warm stereo bus compressor lives on that. It kind of stays set at its settings all the time. I don't touch it much. I also have a listen bus here. I love to have a listen bus because sometimes if I want to hear how certain plug-in sounds on the overall mix, or I can put this on here, or if you have any software correction, room correction, like some of the Wave stuff, and there's a few other ones, I think the Slate, you might want to put this on the listen bus so what you're listening to, you can hear those corrections and those room adjustments, but it won't actually record if you're printing that down. So listen bus, if you haven't started using that, that is a very useful tool. So that is my main template, at this particular time, moving from what I used to use with 100% in the box. So this one is kind of a blended. So kind of recap a little bit about what I've got going on this template. Is got some plugins, some stock plugins from Studio One, some third-party plugins. Got some hardware also included using the XD pipeline. Once again, if you haven't seen that video where I show you how to set that up, I'll put a link down below for that as well. Now, have a stereo bus compressor on the drum bus. I've got a stereo bus compressor on the main bus. I've got distressors on the kick and the snare that are external, and got 1176 on the vocal, as well as I can use that somewhere else. The only thing when I use that is I have to print that track and then pop that open on another track because I've only got one right now. And then I've got the 1073s and the other 2A. Both of those are from Warm. Big fan of their stuff. It's giving me a good chance to dabble into this hardware hybrid type setup. So anyhow, I hope that's been some use for you. Don't forget, description's down in the bottom. We love you. God loves you. Keep looking up. We'll see you next time.